Okay, innovation, as we've been hearing throughout the day, is forcing a rethink of the economics and the mechanics of serving large number of customers across multiple channels. And we believe ecosystems and open insurance will play a big role in this new transformation. There are many open data initiatives across the world now. For example, open government initiatives, payment services directives, and open banking here in the UK. We are clearly moving into an era that increasingly appreciates or recognizes the value of sharing data. The Open Insurance Initiative is based on a paper that I authored and published a few months ago. I'm pleased to see that I'm increasingly being invited to speak at conferences such as this to promote the concept and to onboard insurers and startups. So my presentation today will focus on the main aspects of open insurance and its objectives and the role of ecosystems. So what sort of problem or set of problems are we trying to solve with open insurance? Research apparently shows that the vast majority of insurers are not really prepared for the expanding wave of data transactions and ecosystems. According to research by Accenture, 75% of insurance executives agree that ecosystems will play a transformative role in the insurance sector. And 70% of insurers agree that ecosystems provide or create environment for otherwise unlikely partners. Point-to-point integrations via individual partnerships for a specific purpose are costly and will increasingly become a hindrance for innovation, speed, and growth. So open insurance has three key components. The first is the design of an open API standard. Open APIs allow companies to publicly expose data and functionalities of various systems to third parties without necessarily having a business relationship with these third parties. So we will hopefully design a best of all worlds API standard to allow data to securely flow between insurers, their customers, and third parties. We will adopt widely used solutions for API architecture, data formats, authentication, and authorization frameworks. It will be an open API or an open source API specification developed, maintained, and driven by a community of developers for use by the international insurance sector. The second key component of open insurance is sharing access to data. Now, there are two types of data involved. The first is open data. This is basically a set of data that has been aggregated and anonymized to hide the identity of the data owner. The second type of data is personal data. This will obviously be subject to rules and regulations relating to data privacy and protection. Now, I will come back to the subject of data sharing. This is not something that insurers usually like to talk about, but I'm hoping to change a few minds this afternoon. The third component of open insurance is what I call consumer data literacy. For those familiar with open banking, this is actually where open banking falls short. And I'll give you some statistics here. 91% of consumers are not aware of open banking, and 75% of consumers here in the UK are unlikely to use open banking. In fact, research is showing that customers are 3 times more likely to trust their traditional banks with their data than to share their data with third parties. So this is obviously something that even the insurance sector will have to overcome if open insurance is adopted. We're trying to achieve 4 main goals. The first is to empower consumers to share the data. We also want to enable the rapid creation of applications. And we want also to enable the creation or the development of insurance ecosystems. And we're also aiming to accelerate innovations across the value chain. Now, an ecosystem approach emphasizing collaboration with InsurTech and FinTech startups and tech adoption will significantly accelerate innovations in product, services, and business models. This will also enable us to close the gap between ideas and implementation. The least consumers could hope for are cheaper, wider alternatives, and easier switching opportunities. Change is never easy. Shifting an industry in a new direction is not without challenges. Some of these challenges include the lack of API and data standards, which is a rather obvious one. There are also inherent API vulnerabilities and scalability issues. There's also data loss and privacy risks. And more importantly, there are also corporate management and cultural resistance to change. So these are difficult challenges, but they're not impossible to solve. Looking at the current state of open APIs in insurance, there are probably less than a handful of open APIs. The first to introduce APIs is Lemonade, and we're all aware of what Lemonade does. We're aware that other companies are also planning and testing for open APIs here in the UK. We've actually partnered with one already. Use cases of open insurance. This is actually where it gets most interesting. We expect most of the innovation to come from InsurTech and FinTech startups. Ecosystems will obviously reshape the nature of insurance. So this is not a cheat sheet, but we were hoping that some killer apps could be developed. We also expect that microinsurance and cyber insurance will be big winners in digital ecosystems, and if open insurance is adopted. This is a list of potential ecosystem participants. It gives a clearer picture of how ecosystems could develop, opening up new distribution channels and developing cross-industry products. Several ecosystems are emerging that are relevant and attractive to insurers, such as the mobility ecosystem, the housing ecosystem, B2B, and let's not forget open banking ecosystem as well. Ecosystems could provide insurance with leverage. For example, other ecosystem participants could have a better, more intensive relationship with insurance customers than the insurers themselves. Ecosystems could also provide data monetization opportunities. For example, insurers could sell data analytics to media companies focusing on location-based advertising. The ecosystems could also provide data harvesting opportunities. For instance, companies outside the insurance sector are increasingly generating data or risk-related data that could be very useful for insurers. In the future, we believe that no individual company will have all the resources, time, or capabilities required for success in this new era of insurance. In ecosystems, insurers will be able to tap the most valuable technologies, services, and distribution channels without the multiplication of individual costly and complex individual partnerships. So we believe that we need to move away from how do we get people to buy insurance to a mindset of how can we be in the right place at the right time. So going back to the subject of data sharing, we know that insurance is a data-intensive business, more so than banking or any other business. And the range of data that's going to be collected will significantly increase with the adoption of Internet of Things, sensors, and autonomous vehicles. For example, autonomous vehicles come equipped with a rich package of sensors, which may include multiple cameras, real-time mapping, radar and LiDAR. This equipment will generate significant amount of data that is useful for insurers and could also be useful for motor manufacturers. Presently, a significant number of insurers don't typically mine their data for insights. But open APIs will allow for outside innovation to bring new perspectives on how to use that data to increase revenues. Insurers are not generally open about sharing their data. There's no surprises here because they see data as providing a competitive edge in the race. Going back to the example of the autonomous vehicles, now to develop fully autonomous vehicles, we would require a large amount of data to teach machine learning algorithms edge cases. Ideally, we want the AI rather than a human to drive the vehicle. Now, autonomous vehicles don't obviously have steering wheels and pedals. Today's autonomous vehicles work perfectly under ideal conditions, but this is not really what we're aiming for. The RAND Institute estimates that we would need to harvest trillion miles of rich driving data to be able to develop fully autonomous vehicles. Now, this is a very large amount of data that no one company could accumulate. It would certainly take many, many years to do this. Cyber insurance has a similar problem. Limited, robust, publicly available data has prevented cyber insurance from attaining maturity. So for data sharing to happen, we believe the insurer should be able to register, protect, and control the data. And we need proven tech to do this. And we think that distributed ledgers and blockchain could enable this to happen. By creating digital property rights and storing this information in blockchain, the insurers should have the incentives to cooperate and to share the data. Okay, moving the initiative forward, most of my efforts right now go into thinking how to get the industry to work together, to have a common approach to be able to build scale. This is basically why I'm here. I'm promoting the concept and onboarding insurers and startups, agencies, and even regulators. We're planning to go into the fundraising phase right now to be able to start the real work of developing the standard of APIs. And I'm happy to say that we've been already nominated for a couple of innovation awards and been finalists in one. So with this, I wrap my presentation. If anyone has any questions or ideas they'd like to share, I'm ready.
Thank you for that. You said it's going to be, insurers are resistant to change, resistant to sharing that data.
Yeah.
What do you think it's going to take for a group to lead the market, or a set of individual companies to lead the market in sharing that data and starting that trend? Who's going to be boldest first? What's going to trigger that, do you think?
Now, open insurance is an industry-driven initiative. It's not, it's not something that is mandated by regulators. Okay, so I think the increasing number of open initiatives, and I could name, for instance, MOBI, the Mobility Blockchain Initiative. It's another industry-driven initiative trying to get motor manufacturers to share the data that they will be accumulating out of new vehicles that they're building, which come already fitted with Internet of Things sensors and information systems. I think there will be an increasing trend in insurance willing to participate and share the data. Okay, like I said, one of those ideas could be the ability to use distributed ledgers and blockchains to create property rights to protect their interests so that this data can be monetized by them. Okay, so these are some of the examples that we could use to get the industry to cooperate.
What is your timeline?
Sorry?
What is the timeline?
For the Open Insurance Initiative? Well, we would expect something between 3 to 5 years to get the industry to take part in this. So it's not something that's going to be achieved within 12 months. We're probably, we've been marketing the initiative for about 3 or 4 months now. So it's really early days.
So the Open Banking Initiative came out of a directive, and there was a governmental requirement to put it in place.
Yeah.
This doesn't appear to be driven in the same way. So what was the instigator for this being put in place, and what's the corporate structure? Is it an NGO?
Yeah, it will eventually become a not-for-profit organization. We're planning to set up an institute here in London. I've had discussions with the FCA earlier this week, and they're willing to provide ongoing support for the initiative to see the institute being set up here. Sorry, what was the first question?
What was the instigator for the...
Okay, well, I mean, the idea came about, okay, during my work with some startups, InsurTech startups. They were price aggregators. They wanted to integrate with the systems of different insurers. And I realized that the startup had to get in touch with the system vendors of the insurers so that they can arrange for the API specifications to be implemented. And this process had to be replicated across so many different insurers. So an API standard that everybody used could be used by all the different insurers within a single market. So it would be a lot easier for InsurTech startups to connect or integrate with all these different systems without going through repeating this process of fine-tuning different systems.